Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Esoteric and our continuing series of Model Museum, where I review every single Sega Model 1, Model 2, and Model 3 arcade game in a retrospective fashion that isn't a racing game made by Sega. Obviously this is a racing game, but it's made by Jaleco, and this is Super GT 24H. It seems like Sega developed all of the games on the Model 2, but Jaleco had two games. They were both racing games, this and Over Rev. And while I prefer Over Rev to Super GT 24H, this is still a ton of fun and definitely a game we want to talk about and check out. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link in the description below as well. But let's get right into what Super GT 24H truly is. This basically feels like a Daytona competitor, except it's not made by Sega. It's got the same vibes, it's got a very similar handling scheme, it's got all the things that you know and love out of a Sega racing game, just not at all made by Sega. And I will say that this game has absolutely outstanding drifting. Once you finally figure out the controls and the car you like, you can really just throw this car around multiple corners and you feel basically invincible. It does take a few times to get used to the drifting, but once you get the handle of it, you can just start throwing this car around like it owes you money, and it is going to respond. If you hit a wall, it's because you didn't take a clean racing line. Because you'll see right there, I am just drifting around the corners, passing opponents, and everything is just going so superbly well for me on this race. And that is why I love this game so much. The sense of handling is just good, but you will see there I finally did hit the wall. I came into that corner a little bit hot. And just like any good arcade racing game, you need to worry about your racing line, because if you do come in too fast, you're really going to put yourself in a bad situation. But you'll see here, you do get arrows telling you how intense or how easy a corner is going to be, so you really can plan. I drifted a little bit too late there, and I threw the back end out and did lose some time, but I'm still getting up into 5th place, so it's going okay for me. But that's really all you want out of an arcade racing game. You want the physics to work for you, and you want to know that if you make a mistake, the mistake is on you and not because the control scheme, the physics, or the handling were fighting with you. Now, Sega did an absolutely incredible job with their arcade racing physics, but Jaleco here, I think, did as good of a job, and they're such a smaller company compared to Sega, it almost feels like maybe Sega assisted them with some of the handling, as it does feel that close, and obviously being one of the only developers that wasn't Sega to make Model 2 games, it's quite possible that they had a very close working relationship with Sega. But when you get into the first-person view here, the sensation of speed in this game is absolutely outstanding. It's running at a rock-solid 60 frames a second. It is just everything you want. And if we move over to Over Rev, you're going to see it's more of an arcadey game, and that's why I kind of prefer that one more. It's just more animated, it's more colorful, and it's definitely hyped up to 11. But Super GT 24H is no slouch whatsoever, and I do love in the cockpit view, which I'll show you a little bit more of shortly. You do get full real-time control of your arms, and you see that wheel moving back and forth. It's a small touch, but it makes a big difference, as does the time of day. In laps, you're going to change the time, and it's going to get dark, and right there you'll see the AI can be very aggressive. They knocked me right into the wall. You definitely don't want to be bumping cars in this game, because it basically makes you veer off into the guardrail, and you're going to lose basically all of your speed. But I do love a racing game that gives you different looks. You can go from morning to afternoon to golden hour to nighttime all in one race, so it makes it feel like each lap is unique, different, and independent of itself. Now, the only thing that I think is wrong, quote-unquote, with this game is there's only 2 courses, but that's not really surprising, because this is the first of 2 games Jaleco made for the Model 2, and anytime there's new hardware and new games for in the early days, it seems like developers have to spend more time getting up to speed with the hardware, and they don't have as much time to make as much game. That's when you go over to Over Rev, and you see that there are 4 courses in that game. The developers were comfortable with the hardware, and they were able to spend more of their time actually making a game. But again, I just love this game. The visuals are unique. It's slightly Sega, but it's definitely toned down in the color department. That sky is not that vibrant blue. It's definitely more of a realistic look. But again, as we just race through downtown in 4th position here, it's just so much fun to play this game. And with the arrows, it kind of has like a 10% Sega Rally vibe as well. It's too bad that Jaleco never made a rally game on the Model 2. I would have loved to see their take on the Sega formula with their own developers. But this is just a fun game, and it's a rare game. You're definitely not going to be seeing these much at arcades anymore, but if you do know where there is one, leave me a comment down below, because I would be curious. And Jaleco made some awesome soundtracks as well, so go ahead and listen for 45 seconds, and I'll come back and show you more of the game. But enjoy, because it is good. It's a really good soundtrack. I don't think it lives up to the height of what Sega would do on Model 2 and 3, but the sound engineers at Jaleco were no slouches themselves. And as you see me move over to another car here, the game does give you choices, and this car definitely has a lot faster of a top speed, but the ass end of it is going to slide out a lot easier. Once you get used to the physics and controls of this car, it's definitely going to be a more high performance vehicle, but it takes a lot more to get used to it because it really wants to just drift as much as humanly possible. But that's the great risk versus reward thing in a game like this. You can choose the car that has a moderate top speed but a lot better handling in the drifting department, or you can choose the car that absolutely goes like a bat out of hell but is definitely going to give you a lot more hell in the corners. You can decide which one you want, but trust me, using the fastest cars in this game and getting used to them is going to take a lot more than just a few races. Now I am playing this game with a wheel via emulation, and I definitely recommend a wheel. It'll work on pretty much any analog controller that you can get into Windows 10, but using a wheel just opens this up way more. It gives you that sensation of actually driving just like the arcade cabinet would. And this definitely still has that Sega vibe to it. The steering, the handling all feel so similar. Dial in one setting, you could be playing Daytona, you can be playing Sega Rally, you can be playing Super GT 24H, and Over Rev all in the same setup, and I can't recommend a wheel enough. I just love this game, but I don't love it as much as Over Rev, so I want to talk about that for a moment in this game, because Jaleco didn't do a ton more racing games. If we move over to Over Rev, the later game on Model 2, it's got a better visual look, the textures are better, and I would just say overall it's a more fun game. The courses are more diverse and unique, and you just get so many more of them. That's what really makes the difference. Super GT 24H is going to be a fun game, but once you've mastered the two courses and you start winning first place, you don't really have much of a reason to come back to the game. Where something like Over Rev here gives you so much more to do, so much more to see, and so many more unique courses. But these games go hand in hand. That's why I want to talk about them both together, because Jaleco made two Model 2 games when the hardware is basically known for being an exclusive Sega platform. And it's interesting that they went with two racing games as well and never did try any other genre. But as we get into the cockpit view, the one I promised you earlier, I do love that the hands move around. You're going to see that they're a little bit herky-jerky and the animation's not perfectly smooth, but those hands do shake when you get into the corner and start drifting, and it does really sell the illusion of driving the car and going fast, especially if you have the wheel in your hand. You'll start seeing that your hands in-game start matching your hands on the wheel itself. And the nice thing is you can play around with different courses. You can make them go in reverse to give you a little bit more diversity. And if you really want a challenge, you can go into the test menu under game assignments, and you're going to go and move this one setting, race mode to long. Now all of a sudden you're going to have a 10-lap course and a 5-lap course, giving you a lot more challenge. So even though there's only two courses in the game, between mirror mode, reverse mode, and having those extra laps, you're going to find a ton of fun to play. And this is a PCB I hope to add to my collection soon, but that's Super GT 24H. We'll be back next week with more Model Museum. I'll have videos throughout the week as well, but if you do know where there's an arcade cabinet for this game, leave me a comment down below because I would be curious. Race is over, we're done. Bye-bye.